Hello, this is Geeta Aurora, and welcome back to Ayurveda Basics. In this segment, we'll be talking about the 5 great elements called Pancha Mahabhuta. So, these 5 elements, what you experience is everything is in the universe is created from a certain ratio of the 5 elements. The thought process is that these are simple yet profound tools to recognize the balances in all aspects of life. If you can understand earth, water, fire, air, and space, which we'll go into much deeper in just a minute, you have the ability to identify the weak and strong points of your own individuality and find balancing elements for your diet, lifestyle, and the environment that you live in. Understanding the dominant qualities or dominant elements inside yourself or your loved ones or your clients or whoever you're dealing with, understanding the substance or environment, what the dominant elements are, you have the ability to know what influences will be exerted upon the body and the mind. And you have the ability to make changes from there. Pancha Mahabhuta. So Pancha means 5, Panch. Maha is great, and Bhuta are elements. So what it translates to are the 5 great elements. Pancha Mahabhuta. The first one is space, next is air, then fire, water, and then earth. So it goes from the subtle, light, and intangible all the way to the dense, heavy, and gross. And in the very beginning, when we started talking about the Sankhya philosophy, I had told you a little story about how it all comes together. So I'm going to tell you again. It'll make a little bit more sense possibly now. So in the beginning, there was only space, and there were vibrations of sounds created in the space. The vibrations caused movement, creating the wind element. As sound and vibrations moved, there began friction. As friction increased, it became hot and heated. So heat was created with the fire element. With the heat now in space, there were tendencies towards condensation of water droplets, creating the water element. And as the water increased in volume, the mass began mixing with the cosmic dust to create the earth element. These elements are connected to the human physiology, the nature, and our primary constitutions called dosha. So as we move forward, I just want to say one more thing, that please note that as we talk about earth, water, fire, air, and space, they cannot be translated in the way that English represents fire or earth is represented. For example, these elements represents properties and forces that work together, such as minerals in the blood system. So it's the earthy qualities in the water system. So if you have the linear way of thinking and a logical process of a mind, you want to figure out, well, how is earth going into water, and water going with fire, and fire with the air, and all of that. So just switch the brain a little bit and let whatever you know go, so that we can step into a space of newness and learn this from a completely different perspective of looking at nature and possibly what makes sense. And the first time around, maybe a little bit too much information, but as you sink your teeth a little bit more into understanding these processes, it will start to make a little bit more sense as they all start to gel together. So first of all, let's start with the first element of space. The qualities of space or ether, called Akash in Sanskrit, are softness. It's light, it's subtle, it's cold, it's vast, and it's clear. The actions of the space is to provide openness. This facilitates a high vibration of sound. So space is responsible for sound. Looking at space as a substance, it is anything that is light, profuse, and ethereal. An example is how you think. The intake increases lightness and spaciness. When you start to think too much, it's an overwhelm of lightness and perhaps spaciness. When we look at space, in Sanskrit it means Akash. Akash, translated, is all encompassing, it's omnipresent, and it's all pervading. So space is the home within which all objects in the universe exist. It is the most subtle element in the universe with mystical qualities because it can't be seen. It's an idea, it's space, it's profound, it's subtle, it's open in the physical body, outer space, space between the atoms. Just imagine, you will not be able to move your physical body if there's no space in the open cavities of the joints of your mouth, the way the lungs function, the bones, the bladder, the GI tract. Moving on to the next one, which is about air, the next element, air, called Vayu. Vayu has the qualities of being invisible. It's weightless, it's mobile, it's cool, it's dry, and it's subtle. The action is movement, and it causes dryness and evaporation when it's mixed with fire. And due to its affinity with the nervous system, it specifically acts with the sense of touch and the action of the hands to give, receive, to move things. Anything dry and airy, it creates gases. So the intake of coolness, dryness, movement, and circulation all is associated with air. Anytime there is any motion, you know air is present. Air is the medium between space moving towards form. So it's that unknown consciousness that moves towards some form, taking from space. As it goes from the very subtle, and it's moving up to becoming a little bit more dense and heavier in taking form. So the second layer is air. The air element is the point where it takes on a particular direction or a goal, an idea. Just think about an idea that you have. It has a tendency to maybe manifest, maybe not. You change the idea, you're not sure, it's not certain, but it's always moving. There's an idea that has a tendency to be erotic and quickly move in another direction from what you had anticipated. In the physical body, the air represents electrical energy in the nervous system, movement of all the tissues and cell functions, the formation of gases, and it governs all of the senses. The next element is fire. Fire has the qualities of being hot, sharp, dry, subtle, weightless, and rough. The actions are heat and light. And the main areas for fire is transformation and metabolism of form, color, and temperature. It's combustible, hot, and when you eat spicy food, it could create more bile in the body. The intake of heat, of more fire in the body, increases digestion, metabolism, fire, and heat. But it can also, when somebody is imbalanced, it can cause too much of it, causing diarrhea, causing irritable bowel syndrome, causing different issues. In looking at fire as well, in modern science, fire shows that every molecule releases or takes in heat during its transformation process to create a new molecule. Well, in Ayurveda, fire is also looked at as intelligence and comprehension. It regulates the balance of the body temperature, the absorption and assimilation of food, and the transformative power of the liver. The liver, in today's world, we have so much medications, and when the liver is overworked, you can see how it starts to produce other problems in the skin and causing toxins to back up in the system. So the transformative power of the fire is significant, having to do with the liver. The fire properties are carried through the body by the blood. When the limbs become cold, the blood system is not quite carrying through the circulation is not so good. So the blood system needs to be ramped up. So maybe doing more exercise or breathing or walking or something to keep the limbs moving. Otherwise, when the blood stops, the limbs go cold. The fire of transformation and intelligence also brings ideas or goals into form. The next element is water. Water we call jal. Jal has the qualities of being oily, moist, cool, soft, and maybe sticky. The purpose of water is cohesion, lubrication, and transportation. It provides fluidity, such as through saliva. So liquids in the body, it increases smoothness, coolness, softness, and the flow of fluids. Water in modern science is known as the universal solvent due to its ability to dissolve or suspend other substances. In Ayurveda, predominantly, water is looked at as it manifests as the plasma or the lymph system, which transports nutrients to the cells and toxins. It takes toxins away from the cells to the blood system. For the ideas that you had, now the water starts to give it nourishment and connectedness to other ideas and forms to start taking a little bit more of a form than it did at the stage when there's just the spaciness of just thinking about an idea or not knowing where it's going to go. Now there's more nourishment to the ideas and connectedness occurring. Next, we look at the earth element called Prithvi. These are the qualities of the earth has the qualities of heaviness, roughness, being solid, stable, and slow. It has attributes of being heavy and dense. The main object of the earth is to have the structure, shape, and having some stability. Anywhere there's stability, permanence, and rigidity, it is said that there's earth qualities are present. Also, the stickiness, sluggishness in the body, the intake increases heaviness, stability, obesity, and solidity in the body, increasing. This is only the case if there's an imbalance going on in the body and there's already stickiness and sluggishness. Now you take in more ice creams and dairy and things like that. It's going to create more stickiness and obesity and more stability and more heaviness and more grounding. So there's a principle of like attracts like, and we'll go into that a little bit more when we get to doshas. But there's ways of looking at all of these elements and doing the opposite to bring into balance. The earth qualities, it manifests as solid structures such as the bones, the muscles, cartilage, nails, hair, teeth, and the skin. The earth governs the sense of smell and the action of excreting waste products out of the body. We know that Mother Earth holds and cradles every one of us and everything on the planet, giving support, food, and shelter to each one of us. The earth is also looked at, the earthy qualities, as minerals in the bodily fluids, in the blood system. The blood system becomes water, but the minerals are the earthy qualities. So here it starts to take up a little bit more complication that you can see of understanding all the elements as a separate unit, because they all work together. The ideas that you have, now they start to become alive. The vision that you had, these ideas, they take more of a solid form and start to manifest itself in a way that you had just thought about at this stage of space. So when we look at the doshas from here, the vata dosha is the dominant combination of air and space. So a person who has vata dosha as their dominant quality constitution, they have the ability to be very intuitive. They can see and feel what is not present. They have clarity and perhaps some psychic phenomena, like they're always have the ability to predict what's going to happen. So it's not true for everyone, but the air and space elements, when very connected to the essence of the Vata dosha, these are the principal qualities of them. For the Pitta dosha, it has the dominance of fire and water. It's an example of being in a desert, of how hot it gets. Sometimes when I give the example to people that if they have excessive dryness in the body, that when you pour water on a very dry surface in the desert, even the water doesn't absorb, it just floats on the top and dries up. So in looking at the Pitta dosha, we look at how well is your metabolism functioning. It's like the fire on the stove, the digestive fire, that is responsible for metabolism at all levels of thoughts, words, feelings, desires. How well are you able to digest things and metabolize them in your body and mind? The Kapha constitution is made up of earth and water. The examples are solidity and form. So when in nature, when you see in the wintertime, when earth and water, there's a lot of rain, and that sluggishness starts to come on. You see mudslides. The winter weather is very heavy. It's foggy. The sliminess of the mud, and also in just another context, when people take drugs or narcotics, it creates an unreal density of the mind. So we can start to look at these constitution from different factors, different perspectives of how it either helps you or brings more issues to the body and mind. So this brings us to a conclusion of the 5 great elements, and moving next into learning about dosha theory. This is a really exciting place because now you're getting your feet wet and understanding how the elements are all coming together. And when we look at doshas, it's just not am I a vata, pitta, or kapha, but there's so much more to understanding the ways of each of the elements, how each one has its own contribution to who you are or your loved one is, in understanding why they operate a certain way, and maybe giving you some tools to work with so that we can all function in harmony with balancing factors. I am so ready to share the dosha section with you, and I can't wait to see you in the next segment. So until then, namaste and be well.